Welcome into the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. Today is Thursday, September the 11th. I'm Zach Ewing with Koki Riley and Wilson Alexander. We are here to break down LSU versus Florida, the SEC opener for both teams, I guess, and one we really had circled before the year as a huge game.
Yes, that's right. Big night in Tiger Stadium on Saturday. LSU is encouraging everybody to wear gold. Brian Kelly starting his press conference this week, trying to make sure, sort of get that message out to the fans that they want home field advantage this week to really show up. And, because Florida comes into this game reeling after the loss to South Florida, but this should still be a really tight game if Florida plays up to its potential. So LSU's going to need that advantage at home.
I think I'll wear black. Koki, what about you?
Yeah, I'll stick to my neutral colors.
Picked out the wardrobe yet?
Are we both going to
Orange
wear the
robe?
same shoes to the game, too?
I think we should.
I don't know if you
what
can
do
see
think?
that on the
If you're
Yeah.
listening or if you're watching, you can't see it. Koki and I are both wearing retro Nikes, which has happened multiple times ever since Koki bought the same pair of shoes that I already have owned for a decade.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Thank
your
my
fault
girlfriend
somehow.
for getting me these shoes.
While
Actually,
we're
this is
picking
not
on
my
Koki.
decision.
Well, she did a good job.
Yes.
This is going to be the Picking on Koki show. So while we're there, we'll get to something in a minute. First, we got to pay the bills, and we are brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac. You can command the road in a Cadillac where luxury, power, and presence come together. Experience it today at Jerry Lane Cadillac. Koki is an AP Top 25 voter, and that is kind of a fun job sometimes. That is kind of a not fun job sometimes. And this week probably falls into the latter category because Koki, diligently put out his ballot. You got to cover a game Saturday night. What time do you leave Tiger Stadium? Like 12:30? I don't know. Something
12:30, yeah.
Something like that on Sunday morning, and then by 10 a.m. you have to have your poll vote in for the AP poll. So it's a quick turnaround. There has been a lot of controversy with it this week from other voters. Koki got called out by one Danny Cannell, former ESPN personality.
And now he works for a CBS radio station.
For some of your poll decisions. And so we thought we'd give you this platform to defend them.
Yeah, so this is actually kind of a natural segue because it has to deal with Florida, right? And LSU's playing Florida this week. So on my poll, I had Florida ahead of South Florida, and I have Alabama ahead of Florida State, despite the fact that
they're head-to-head.
Those were head-to-head games, and Florida State beat Alabama and South Florida beat Florida. But my philosophy as a voter, now that we're only two games into the season, a couple of teams have played three, so we don't really know what these teams are exactly. So and to me, like the best way to rank these teams, I think preseason prior still has to play a fairly sizable factor in that. Obviously, the result still matters, right? And I think I reflected that by putting South Florida in my top 20. I think I reflected that by putting Florida State in my top at least 20, close to 15-ish range. And I think that just goes to show, like, those two teams were nowhere near my top 25 to start the year. They had really good wins. They were bumped accordingly, right? But I wasn't willing to say that they're better than an Alabama team that was number 5 in my preseason poll, a Florida team that was number 5 before their loss last week. I wasn't willing to say that those teams are now worse than these teams I didn't even have ranked because of one game. And one game shouldn't determine everything. Like, for example, Northern Illinois beat Notre Dame last year. Notre Dame played for the national championship. Does that mean Northern Illinois should have played for the national championship too because they beat Notre
absolutely.
Dame? Yeah, exactly. So there's a logical fallacy to purely going on the result of 1 week. And there's just a lot of different factors that you have to consider, or at least in my opinion, that I consider when I'm filling out my poll every single week.
I think that reasonable minds can disagree on this. If you want to.
Absolutely.
The problem is we have only 2 data points for every team right now. Every team's only played 2 games. You mentioned Notre Dame and Northern Illinois. By the end of the year, we'll have 12, 13, 14 data points on these teams. There will be no reason to strictly use head-to-head, although normal poll behavior still, sometimes people just do it. I can't possibly put this team ahead of that team. If South Florida and Florida played 10 times, Wilson, how many times does Florida win? Even now.
Oh, this is a good South Florida team, but Florida, should have won that game. And there were so many penalties. There were some drops that were critical. Obviously, the spitting did not help anything. But
8 times maybe?
Yeah, I would say you probably would. But again, it's then you get into hypotheticals, which I think really people get into a lot of trouble with as you start to get into the college football playoff selection. part of this of the year. I felt like that happened a lot last year. Like, oh well, Alabama would beat them a lot if they played head to head, and it's like you can't really say that.
Right.
The head to head result was what it was, and so. I probably wouldn't have done the same thing that Koki did if I was a voter. But I also have a lot of respect for Koki because this is part of the reason I have never taken the opportunity when presented with it to vote in the AP poll. He puts a lot of work into this, a lot of thought into this, and I hope that people can understand that. Let me ask you this, Koki. Mm-hmm. What have you seen from Alabama and from Florida? And we'll probably get deeper into Florida as we go through the rest of this podcast because of LSU's game against them this weekend. But what have you seen from them to justify still ranking them where you did, regardless of the head-to-head, regardless of the ahead of Florida State or ahead of South Florida, just where you put them, what have you seen from them to keep them where they are?
Yeah, and I want to be clear that I'm not putting these teams at these parts because of hypotheticals. I think like your preseason research goes into the evidence that the players that they added showed, right? Like these like 5-star recruits are 5-star recruits, like returning starters are returning starters. Like these are like real facts. They're not just hypothetical. So I just want to make it clear about that. So to be honest, like both these teams have just not looked super impressive this season. Both of them have blowout wins against teams that they should have already blown out. So there's not a lot you can take away from that for good and bad. And in the one game we've seen them where they were challenged, they just didn't play very well, right? So from just a pure on the field standpoint, they don't look super duper impressive. But the AP poll isn't about whether you look good or whether you look bad. It's about who are the 25 best teams right now. And I still think, like, when you looked at these teams heading into the season, they deserve to still be one of the 25 best teams. Granted, if Florida gets blown out this week, they're going to probably be out of my poll, right? So, like, the results matter, especially when you accumulate them more over time. We get more data points to see what does this team actually look like? How good are they actually, right? And there's a lot of nuance inside of that as well. So, the results matter. How you win, how you lose matter. Where you win and where you lose matter. Like Florida losing at home instead of losing at South Florida. Like that's something you have to sort of keep in the back of your head. There's just a ton of different factors. But I think like the biggest disconnect with my ballot and a lot of other people's ballot is because I just lean a little bit heavier on my preseason priors when we're a couple weeks into the season, because I'm not going to take one game and believe that should be the sole reason why one team should be ahead of another team, or why one team should be ranked at one spot instead of another, when again it's just one game.
And especially maybe at this point in the season, give it a few weeks and maybe that starts to change.
Exactly.
If you were going solely off of 2 weeks, South Florida probably should be number one.
Yeah, exactly.
They thumped Boise State. They beat Florida on the road. Nobody else has 2 wins like that. So, if you're going just based on that, everybody's using preseason priors to a certain extent. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you'd all have South Florida number one. So I think that, as we go on, those will matter less and less. DJ Lagway did not forget how to play football, and he's still going to be very good, and we think the Gators might be good. And that leads us into Saturday night at Tiger Stadium. 6:30 p.m., ABC. The betting line currently has LSU by 7.5. Surprises me a little bit. We'll talk about our predictions later in the show, but that seems like a lot of points for what we think will be a close game. So let's dig into it. We're going to start with injuries, guys, and some good news on that front for LSU.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how you want to, what good news means to you. Good news in that Trades Green is questionable when he's got a sprained MCL and they're not just fully ruling him as out yet. I would still be surprised if he played in this game, if he played for the next couple of weeks because of that injury. But it's good news in that he, as I'm sure y'all talked about already earlier this week, that he's not like out for the year, that it wasn't that kind of knee injury, and that it's something that LSU thinks they can get him back from in the fairly near future. The other potentially good news is Braylon Moore, who Brian Kelly said yesterday, Wednesday, on his teleconference appearance, that Braylon had practiced on Tuesday, that he was expected to practice again on Wednesday, and that Kelly thought at that moment in the morning they might list him as probable on the first availability report. That wasn't the case. He was listed as questionable. So that's where I say, like, okay, maybe good news. We'll see kind of as we continue to progress here in the days leading into kickoff. If he's able to get back out there, that is a big deal for LSU, especially because it has to go up against Florida. Here's the other side of the injury report. Caleb Banks, their top defensive lineman, is back for this game after missing the first two. He had a sack and a forced fumble against LSU last year. That's going to be a big matchup there on the interior of the offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, he led the team in pressures last season for Florida. And then on the LSU side, I don't know about you, Wilson, but if I had to guess, I'd say Braylon Moore plays in this game, but Trey'Dez Green does not. That seems the way that things are trending at the moment, just by reading the tea leaves and seeing what injuries that they had. And Braylon Moore was warming up on the sideline late in the first half to see if he could come back into the game. This past week against Louisiana Tech, they elected not to do that, as was probably the right decision. But I don't think that injury just doesn't seem super duper serious to me.
I would say he's more likely to.
Yeah, more likely. Yeah.
Kind of. The context of this is with the Southeastern game next week. If you give one of these guys this week off, they can also probably take next week.
Oh, absolutely.
And be back, for Ole Miss at that point, it would be 3 weeks off since the injury. So I think that if you want to play it careful, obviously this is a very big game, but if you're on the fence of them being ready or not, you also have another week. To me, that's part of this discussion.
Yeah, you don't want to do something that's going to inhibit them throughout the month of October and into November.
Yeah. The injury report is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare provider in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you're in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or to schedule your appointment today. The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. All right. Going to move on here and break down LSU-Florida. First, we're going to take our commercial break, and we will have the breakdown and predictions for you right after this.
I think the biggest thing that separates us is our people. We have a really amazing staff that really care about their customers, really care about our product. At Jerry Lane Cadillac, we value trust and transparency above all else. We have a little bit of something for everyone. So whether it be the 2025 Escalade, any of the smaller crossover vehicles, the XT4, 5, and 6, we've also got a wide variety of new EVs, including the 2025 electric Escalade IQ. I think the product lineup right now is the best that it's ever been in Cadillac.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional health care for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You give me love.
Did they ask you to do the commercial too?
Yeah, but they just gave me one line.
Bet like a Caesar. Like, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna tell them how Caesar's Sportsbook is just so easy to use that you can watch and bet thousands of sports events, even some NFL games.
They'll probably show us betting on our favorite players and teams at all the Vegas hotspots too.
Like, we have time for that montage.
I told him I couldn't do it.
They couldn't afford me.
And welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider Podcast, previewing LSU-Florida. We hope you consider subscribing to the LSU Tigers at NOLA.com YouTube channel. That's where all of our shows live. That's where we post some shorts and some highlights and all that good stuff. So subscribe while you're there. Leave a comment. Let us know what you think happens at Tiger Stadium on Saturday night and hit the thumbs up button. So we're going to start when LSU has the ball. We had a whole podcast Tuesday about what ails this offense. Wilson, you weren't on that podcast. What do you think is ailing this offense?
Oh my. Well, there's a few things. I mean, they at least it's kind of weird though, because I felt like the offense looked pretty good for considering the circumstances against Clemson. And they would have scored more of that. What should have been a touchdown to Berrien Brown had actually been ruled a touchdown. And if Brian Kelly had taken the field goal at the end of the half, then we might be thinking about this a little bit differently. Because I feel like the pieces are all there, especially at the skill positions and with Garrett Nussmeier, for this offense to be pretty effective. And I think just overall, the execution is a little bit off. Maybe the timing isn't quite where it needs to be. The blocking isn't quite where it needs to be. But I feel like LSU isn't that far off, again, from having an effective offense. I don't know that it's going to be like a top 15 kind of offense this year, but at least being able to take care of their business a little bit more. They've got to be a lot better in the red zone, which is a problem that dates back to last year. They've got to be able to run the football more effectively against an overmatched team like they should have been against Louisiana Tech. And they've got to be able to hit deep shots in the passing game. Which, I mean, Garrett Nussmeier, we asked him about the interception against Louisiana Tech, and he said, look, I just underthrew it. I mean, he's really, really short, obviously, was one of the things he said, and that he's got to be better about that. And it absolutely does, because he needs to be able to hit it when he's got a receiver wide open. So I think it's a combination of those things, but I feel like there is a chance here for LSU to be better on the offensive side.
Specifically against Florida, Koki, what do you think changes, or what will LSU try to do here?
Well, it's kind of interesting because Louisiana Tech ran a 3-3-5 defense last week. Florida runs the same exact sort of defense formationally, which means that you kind of have to run the ball in this defense, right? Because they're going to have more speed, more players in the secondary. And you got to force those safeties and corners to fit the run more. And you have to sort of expose the fact there's only 3 guys on that defensive line. And last week they had trouble fitting against a 3-3-5 defense. And because they had trouble fitting, Joe Sloan didn't stick to the run. He sort of went away from it, and they ended up throwing the ball too much, especially as the game sort of went along. And they kind of went into the bad habits that we saw them get into last year, from both a play calling standpoint and from an execution standpoint. Once a couple of runs didn't really start to work, and they're way more active with their screen game this season. I understand that, but in a game like this, you got to be able to run the ball, especially in between the tackles against a 3-man front. And I think Florida thinks they can get away with it because of what they have on the defensive line, especially this week with Caleb Banks returning. But I think that's why the Braylon Moore, whether he's healthy and effective, is super important in this game for that reason, one. And then two, just the need to, again, expose that 3-man front. They have to be able to take advantage of that to some sort of degree and force Florida to adjust to something else.
I'm going to be really curious to see, from just a personnel decision, if LSU plays Harlem Berry more in this game. You could see the speed when he and how shifty he can be in some of his touches against Louisiana Tech. He's a freshman. He's got stuff to work on. I recognize all that, but I'm really curious to see if, Brian Kelly said that it was he required them to have a conversation about it. I wonder what the results of that conversation are, because I feel like he should be involved to some degree. Caden Durham should still be getting the majority of the touches at running back. They're going to involve Xavion Thomas in some respect. Maybe even Juwan Johnson is used, but Barry looked good. That one run was particularly impressive, and I'd be interested to see if LSU tries to involve him in some way as well to try to open up the run game.
I think they should use him more in the screen game just to sort of give him more space. And sort of like there was that one play against Clemson, right, where they ran it 3 times in a row, where it's 2 tight ends on the outer hash with a running back in an empty set. So it's 12 with empty, which is you rarely ever see. And it was just screened directly to the running back. Both 2 tight ends, have the blocking advantage, and they got 2 first downs out of that play, and they got positive yards on the third one. So I that's just one example of the ways that you can be creative in getting your running backs out into space. And in terms of just speed and quickness, he's probably the fastest and quickest guy they have in that running back room right now.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking more about this, and the LSU offensive issues really just boil down to a little bit more consistency for me. They are getting some chunk plays. They do look fine, as you said, at times. And again, 2 data points. We're kind of overblowing maybe one bad game. They were fine against Clemson, which we think will be one of the better defenses in the country. I just want to see a little more, I mentioned the third down distance to go against Clemson. The average was over 10 yards. It didn't get a whole lot better against La Tech. It was 8.25. And part of that is because you had a 3rd and 17 and a 3rd and 25 sprinkled in where you're going. That kills a drive. You're done if that happens to you on a drive, and it's just happening a little bit too often to them, these big negative plays.
Yeah. And they're not running the ball efficiently. It's either a big explosive run or it's nothing at all.
Which is what we saw in camp.
Yeah, that's what we saw in camp. And That lack of efficiency. I mean, I think like the creativity they put into the running game has helped the explosive runs. I think that's been a big part of it. That and Caden Durham's ability to like break a tackle from with a guy draped over him behind the line of scrimmage and then breaking out for another 10 yards. Like they have that in their back pocket. They didn't really have those explosive runs last year as much. I mean, they occasionally, but not a ton. And I guess that's an improvement. Right, that's something.
Yeah.
But the efficient, like we can get 5 yards when we want to get 5 yards. That's just not there right now.
Yeah, they're having to get really cute to try to do that.
Yes.
And so I feel like there's some things where it's like Joe Sloan is like drawing some stuff up that and I remember seeing some stuff last year. I was like, oh, that was creative. That's interesting. Like they're doing things like that are, I think requiring an offensive coordinator to really think about how he's positioning his players, and formationally they're doing some different stuff. Like you mentioned the 12 personnel but in empty, and but I'd like to see them be able to just line up and run the football. Don't have to go. Don't get. I would like to see them not have to get super creative, but I don't know if they are capable of doing that yet.
And part of that's personnel. I think the inability to have a running quarterback in this system, in particular, when you're running gun runs all the time, and that quarterback, there's no real threat of the quarterback actually running. It makes things tougher, right? And this is a team that likes to play more in spread. This is a team that likes to air it out with intermediate throws over the middle of the field. This is not a old school under center play action spider 2-wide banana offense where you're hitting the deep shots.
Thank you, John Gruden.
After the John Gruden attack. And I'm not saying they need to be that, but you'd like it if it's just so much easier to run the ball when you're under center, and it's so much easier to set up play action when you're under center and create that simple deception that. It's just hard. Again, it's hard to run the ball at a gun when you don't have a quarterback who's a real rushing threat. So I've said it a million times, but yeah. I do think like that's the core that's like the core issue with this running attack, in my opinion, right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we said the stat on Tuesday, if I'm remembering correctly, 59 runs once you take out sacks and kneel downs. 35 of them have gone for 2 yards or fewer. It's just too many. It's like 60%, almost 60%.
Oh boy.
Like you need the explosives are great, but you need more of the 4s and 5s. And that's a big issue. So moving over to the other side, when Florida has the ball, and boy, if you thought LSU had red zone issues, that was really what killed Florida against South Florida last week. Was they could not finish drives.
No, they could not. I mean, they only scored 16 points, and DJ Lagway. I get maybe it's the off season, being having a bunch of injuries, not being able to throw those receivers throughout camp and all that stuff. He just looks rusty. And the reason I always thought like Florida might be fairly competitive this year and like maybe even contention for the college football playoff is because I thought Lagway could be superhuman at times. The way some of the things we saw him do against against LSU last year when he was basically playing on one healthy leg was really impressive. The way he could throw the ball downfield. And that's kind of what I think gave people a lot of confidence in Florida coming out of the last season was, you got DJ Lagway back for year 2. Yeah. And he just has not looked good enough yet. Really hard to judge him off of their first game against Long Island. And then this past weekend wasn't all that effective. He needs some help from his receivers. They got to catch the ball a little bit better. But, yeah, I think that's the big thing with them that's standing out is just – if Lagway starts to play up to his potential, then we'll watch out. They can beat anybody. That's going to be the big thing to start to watch in this game. And because week 3, I mean, maybe starts to knock off the rust a little bit more. He's also going to be making his first SEC road start at night in Tiger Stadium. That's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah, and what made Lagway so special last season as a true freshman is that he was a walking explosive play, right? Like, think of those deep shots he had against LSU and some of these other SEC opponents. This year, he's weirdly been more efficient. Like, his completion percentage is at 74%, which is high, but he's not creating the explosives. Like, I mean, this year, his average depth of target is 7.5 yards. Last year was 11.8. So like that is a stark difference. And part of it's their inability to create an efficient rushing attack to sort of set up those deep shots downfield. But part of it's also on him, as you're saying, like the sort of rust that he's showing, the lack of a preseason. We've seen this with Joe Burrow in the NFL, right, where like he doesn't have much of a preseason, and you sort of see him end up struggling at the beginning of the regular season. But with Lagway, yeah, I mean, part of it's on him, and part of it's just sort of on this system where if they're not running the ball out of 12 and they sort of live out of 12 personnel, they like tighter formations. They like to pound the ball. They like to sort of be physical. Like if they can't have an efficient rushing attack, and in this game it wasn't that efficient. I think they averaged 4.3 yards per rush against South Florida, which is okay. It's, they kind of have trouble sort of moving the ball with any sort of regularity. So it's an issue for them for sure.
DJ Lagway, you mentioned his completion percentage is up. That 15 of 18 against Long Island, that's 83%.
Yeah.
It was down around 60-some last week against South Florida. So
still not terrible.
Yeah, no, it's not bad. We'll see what he can do against this LSU defense that has been a revelation so far. I mean, better than anybody could have thought. And by the way, Wilson's got a story out on theadvocate.com this morning about Harold Perkins that you should absolutely read. It's just, you'll learn more about Harold than you knew before. Very informative story, and he's been a key part of this. But they've struck such a perfect balance between aggression but staying steady, where they had the one coverage bust late against La Tech. Other than that, I'm having trouble remembering a time where you thought, the LSU defense just botched that play. It just hasn't happened.
No, it hasn't. Because they have the personnel to do what Blake Baker wants to do, which is play man coverage on the back end and then send the house, basically. Yeah. Not always send the house, but I mean blitz heavy and create havoc in the backfield. He wants his defensive tackles to, as he has said, be the tip of the spear, to get upfield and start to disrupt things, not just eat up blocks. And they've got a Bernard Gooden to help do that. Jacobian Guillory has played well. He started both games. He's played pretty well coming off the Achilles. Dominic McKinley and Ahmad Bro are part of that rotation too. And then you're getting, I think, pretty good play from your edges. Whit Weeks and Harold Perkins are flying around. But the biggest improvement has been in the secondary. I mean, Mansour Delane, you talk about revelation. Mansour Delane's been a revelation so far. And he didn't even play a ton against Louisiana Tech. It seemed like LSU was rotating a lot of guys. DJ Pickett got more snaps than he had against Clemson. Ashton Stamps got a good bit of playing time after not playing against Clemson. But I would expect it to probably go more to rotationally to kind of where they had it in that first game, at least to an extent. And so that's what's really been the key. They've got the personnel on the back end to be sticky, and especially with Delane and I think the safety play has been much improved from what else you had before. And so far that's really worked out. There's always going to be that risk with Baker's defense about giving up an explosive play because you send everybody, but they haven't faced a team yet that's been able to take advantage of that yet. And we'll just kind of have to wait to see if they will.
And Florida doesn't really seem like that team, despite the fact that they have the big-armed quarterback, right? This big-armed quarterback is going to be playing in his first true SEC road game at night in Tiger Stadium. And two, Florida's receiving core hasn't been super impressive to start the year, and Dallas Wilson's going to be out for this game. Yep. So I think that LSU has the personnel in the back to really keep this Florida receiving core intact. And as long as they do that and continue what they've been doing in the run game, where you have guys like Jack Piper and collapsing the line and opening up space for the linebackers to make plays, and you have the linebackers making plays in the backfield in passing situations because you have a secondary that can play man coverage, those two things combined is why they've been so good so far.
That's such a key point about the run game, why it's been successful, opening things up for the linebackers. Because this defense, they talked about that, I remember a lot last year, how this is supposed to be a linebacker-driven defense. They want those guys coming downhill and then having space behind the defensive line tackles to have space to make plays, and that's been happening. Yeah,
but it's been really good, and I think it's a fair point too. Lagway, we know he's got a lot of talent. This is not an environment he's been in before. We'll see what happens. Maybe he rises to the occasion, maybe he doesn't. A quick note on special teams. Obviously, it's early. Have you guys noticed anything on special teams? The one I wanted to bring up, again, 2 games, not time to panic. Grant Chadwick's second to last in the country in net punting. Now, he had a punt from the plus 39 and the plus 40 against Clemson that were both touchbacks. That kills your average. It's been 7 punts. I'm just putting a little asterisk by it to go back and check in a couple weeks.
haven't been blown away by the punting. I'll say that. It's early. It's 7 punts, but like I will say that I haven't been blown away with the results that they've gotten on that side on that particular part of the special teams unit. And they also have a missed field goal. So, you know.
But, so you talked to Xavier Thomas on Tuesday, right? I mean, about him and Barry and Brown. And do you feel like I feel like there's more that they could be getting out of the return game as well? Like they've got 2 guys there who are good returners. I would like to see more from that. What do you think?
You guys know how many kickoffs they've returned this year?
Isn't it one?
One.
Now, they haven't given up a lot of points. That's part of that, but they've only returned 1 kickoff.
They haven't had a lot of opportunities to really take advantage of these kickoffs and punts, in my opinion. At least just from seeing the punts and seeing the kickoffs, like there hasn't been a lot of opportunity to really take something to the next level. I think Xavier Thomas had 1 pretty decent return against Louisiana Tech, but that's really been it. There just hasn't been a lot of opportunity, even though in the punting game, it seems like there has been a lot of opportunity because this defense is forcing so many punts.
One more special teams note. Trey Smack, great name, the Florida kicker, missed 3 field goals against Long Island. One of them was from 57, and he also made a 56-yarder, but he also missed from, I think, like 39 and 41. So not the most consistent guy in the world. He did, I think, make both of his kicks last week, or all 3 of his kicks last week. He's already kicked like 8 field goals.
Real quick to Koki's point, Xavier Thomas has 2 returns for 24 yards, so an average of 12 yards per return is pretty darn good. And then Barry and Brown had the 1 kickoff return went for 42 yards. Yeah. So it's just like, hopefully, LSU clearly has some talent there, and for their sake, hopefully they're able to take advantage of it a little bit more. Yeah.
All right, so that's special teams. Let's do our keys to the game for Florida at LSU. Koki, what do you have as a key for LSU coming out victorious Saturday night?
Well, we talked about this a good bit in detail, but I think if LSU can establish some sort of running game, they're going to win this game because they have so many advantages on the defensive side already. I think they have a talented enough receiving core, even with or without Trey Green, to get open. But it's going to be a lot tougher to get open if you can't run the ball and you're stuck in 3rd and 10. So I think if this team shows any semblance of a consistent down-to-down offense where they can stay on the field and stay ahead of the sticks at least somewhat, they're going to win this game. And I think it's that simple because they have so many advantages on the defensive side of the ball, and Florida's path to victory is quite narrow.
For me, it's hold Florida under 20 points. If you can do that, I think you win the game. That's probably going to be the recipe for LSU in a lot of games this year because of how good the defense seems to be. I don't think they need the offense to be incredible. So if they can hold Florida under 20, then I think they'll win. In order to get there, I also think a lot of this comes down to which team is better in the red zone. I mean, that's, again, most football games. But like LSU, that's something that Brian Kelly circled on Monday as the biggest concern for him on offense was LSU's red zone touchdown percentage. You talked about, Florida having to settle for field goals against South Florida, not being able to convert at times. Whoever can be better at scoring touchdowns in the red zone is going to be the winner of this game too.
I want to see LSU's defense rattle DJ Lagway's cage a little bit. I think the one thing the LSU defense hasn't been great at is turnovers, forcing turnovers in the first 2 weeks. I think there's a couple in there from Lagway if you can get the crowd into it, come after him a little bit with some blitzes and some different looks, and you may get one out of him or even multiple. And if that's the case, LSU's not losing this game. So, all right, prediction time. Leave your pick for Tigers and Gators in the comments below. Rab and Reed are not here. We'll put their scores up. I accidentally deleted the file where I had them written down. Rab was 24-16. I don't remember what Reed was, but it was a
27-20. I'm looking at it right now.
27-20. So they both have LSU winning right around where the spread is. We said it was 7.5. Rab's got LSU by 8. Reed has LSU by 7. Koki, what say you?
Yeah, I have LSU winning 21-17. I have it a little bit closer, but I think that's mostly because it's going to be a defensive-minded game because I think both these defenses are equipped to make quite a few stops in this matchup, similar to the Clemson game. But I like LSU being on top. A lot of it's because they're at home at night in Tiger Stadium. They've lost once in Brian Kelly's tenure at home at night in Tiger Stadium, and that was to Alabama. So, and I don't know, just given what we saw from Florida's offense last week at home, like I have trouble seeing it sort of flip like that in 1 week. I mean, I've been more surprised before, but that would really surprise me. 17 might be overselling it, honestly, but 21-17 is my score.
I'm very close to that at 20-17. I don't think that LSU is going to be able to get in the end zone 3 times because we haven't really seen them be that good in the red zone yet, but that they'll be able to do enough, especially on the defensive side of the ball, to win this game. Closer than the experts think, though, as Lee Corso would say.
Yes.
I feel like this is, if LSU had an offense that was more impressive to us through 2 weeks, then I don't even think that this is that close of a game, ultimately playing it at home and all of those sorts of things. But they haven't been able to show that they can take over a game offensively, and so that'll keep the score down. But I still have LSU winning. It makes me nervous that I've seen all of us picking LSU. I've seen a lot of national people picking LSU. That's right when, Florida's reeling, Billy Napier's down, he's going to lose his job soon and all that stuff. And that's right when they could win.
Yeah.
So that makes me nervous. But I feel like playing at home I'm still going to lean LSU on this one.
You're right on all those points. By the way, like 21-17, 2017, the shoes. Like, what, guys, this is getting a little scary.
Yeah, I think we're spending too much time
with the
together.
blue shirts too.
I have been contrarian the last 2 weeks on this show. I was the only one to pick LSU to beat Clemson. I was the only one to pick Louisiana Tech to cover. I thought very hard because of the points you made about picking Florida. I really think Florida has a chance to come in as kind of the cornered animal here and surprise everybody. They're way too talented to just get blown out. I actually think Florida will have the lead most of the night Saturday night. But ultimately, I do think the LSU defense gets that turnover. I just can't pick Florida to come in here and win Saturday night. I have LSU winning 24-20. Late turnover sets up the game-winning touchdown.
Well, that would be very exciting. That would certainly be exciting. I'm almost disappointed in you, though. I mean, you clearly want to do it.
Yeah,
you want to
I
pick
do
Florida.
want to do it, and I got to stay true to what I think, right?
Your head beat your heart today.
A little bit. Maybe it's the other way around. I'm not sure. All right, guys, before we get out of here, anything else you got your eye on this weekend? Georgia, Tennessee, the big game in the SEC. A lot of conference games like South Carolina, Vandy, Arkansas, Ole Miss. A&M goes to Notre Dame.
A&M or Notre Dame, I'm really curious to see what we're going to get from those two teams. That's going to tell us a lot about A&M, and Notre Dame is going to tell us a lot about Miami, who's playing South Florida this week. So there's a lot of good games this week.
Here's what's going to happen, Koki. South Florida is going to beat Miami, and you're going to have no choice but to rank South Florida number 1 and vault them over the Gators within your AP poll. But you'll keep them behind Alabama.
And that will open the door for the Tulane Green Wave to go in and beat number 1 in the American
I'm excited to watch, Darian Mensah
Tulane Duke.
playing Tulane Duke, after all that stuff in the offseason. Because I feel like I like Tulane in that game. And so I'm excited to watch that one. Georgia, Tennessee is going to tell us a lot, especially about Georgia. They've struggled offensively the first 2 weeks. Not very impressive. They haven't been able to push the ball downfield with Gunnar Stockton. A lot of stuff out to the outside and short kind of throws, and haven't really been able to establish the run either. And they've got some offensive linemen banged up there. So Georgia, number 4 team in the country, having to go on the road to Tennessee is something that going into the year, because of the whole Nico and Joey Aguilar swap, I thought like, Georgia should win that game in Neyland, even though they're playing in Neyland. Not as confident in that now.
Yeah, Aguilar's looked way better than I thought he would, especially against Syracuse. They looked like a dominant SEC team in that Syracuse game. That gave me a lot of confidence.
Struggled with UConn.
Yeah, UConn's way better than they have been in years past, to be fair. And Syracuse is at least well coached and they play hard, right? But they dominated the way they should, like an SEC team should in that game. So that gave me some confidence in them. But one thing to keep in mind is that Tennessee's not going to have its top corner Jermichael McCoy in this game either. So how are they going to stay in front of Georgia's receivers? That's going to be something I'm curious to see.
Both those teams, this is a huge step up in competition. Tennessee's looked better against the weaker competition than Georgia has, but that is such a
Tennessee's at home. There's a lot of factors here. There's a lot of factors going on here. Yeah.
Arkansas at Ole Miss on upset watch, guys, or Vandy at South Carolina. Here's the question: South Carolina or Ole Miss? Who's more likely to get upset at home?
South Carolina's Vandy, right?
Yes.
So
Ole Miss has Arkansas.
I think it's Ole Miss.
Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Taylor Green's looked really good.
I'm going to go South Carolina. I think South Carolina might have their hands full.
They haven't looked
The
very
Vandy
impressive
boys.
at all.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true.
They had a real fight with South Carolina State last week, an FCS school. And then the
It took them a
Virginia
while
Tech
to
game.
it took them a while to separate from Virginia Tech.
They both played Virginia Tech, both the Vanderbilt and South Carolina. And Vanderbilt had the much more impressive win on the road.
That's true.
That is true.
So,
Yeah,
something to keep in mind.
We'll see.
You know?
Fascinating week of football ahead, and of course, the centerpiece for us is LSU hosting Florida at 6:30. We will have a post-game show for you here on the LSU Tigers at NOLA.com YouTube channel. So subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, all of that good stuff. We appreciate you hanging out with us. For Koki Riley and Wilson Alexander, for our producer Molly Ballinger, I'm Zach Ewing. Thank you for watching the LSU Sports Insider.